I've been interested in the folk arts since the mid to late 70s and 80s. My husband, he and I and our two children lived in Norway for a year while he was in graduate school. And it was during that time that I had what I would call an awakening to the breadth of the folk arts of Norway, and especially of that part of Norway. We went to northern Sweden for a festival, a reindeer festival. The little town is called Jokkmokk, and it's north of the Arctic Circle. The festival has taken place the first weekend in February for centuries, and it was during that festival that I really became aware of the Sami jewelry tradition. And it's a folk art, so they used, of course, things that were available to them, namely reindeer leather, reindeer antler, and the spun pewter cord is very traditional. The materials go back centuries. The bracelet tradition itself, that really took hold once the tourists started to arrive in north of the Arctic Circle maybe in the 1940s. Tourists always want to buy something, and so they started the bracelet tradition. The Sami people are a minority indigenous people in countries of Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and the Kola Peninsula of Russia. The Sami people have been, like in many countries, I'm not singling out Sweden and Norway and Finland, but in many countries the indigenous population has undergone a lot of governmentally sanctioned laws that have harmed them, and the Sami are no different. In the late 70s, there was a river project called Alta in northern Norway to create a hydroelectric dam, and it would have taken out a village as well. There was a lot of opposition to this, but even with all of the opposition, the hydroelectric dam was constructed and the village was lost. Ultimately, there was an awakening of the importance of the Sami culture. The Sami parliament was given far more say into what actually went on in that part of Norway, rather than having Oslo dictate reindeer herd sizes. That became much more localized among the Sami people. So even though they lost that battle, they really made strides socioeconomically and politically after that, after the Alta project. This week in Milan, I am teaching two classes here at the Milan Village Art School. I start everybody off on a traditional 3-strand braid bracelet. I will go step by step and tell them how to construct a bracelet. They're learning a new technique, and the success that they have with learning a new technique is exhilarating. They come away with a piece of very wearable jewelry that initially they think it looks like a mess and they won't be successful, and that last stitch pulls it all together, and all of a sudden people are just wowed by what they are able to do. And that's, as a teacher, it's a thrill for me every time at the end of the class to have people so happy with their project. Making a bracelet is far more complex than the actual finished product appears. Initially, I have every student measure their wrist, and from that measurement, we cut a strip of reindeer leather. Then they take the strands of the pewter thread and they braid this in a certain way. The pewter braid that they've created is then sewn on with invisible sort of fish line, very lightweight invisible thread. So they have the leather strip, the pewter braid, which they've now sewn on, and then they tuck the ends of that. They make little slits into both ends. They tuck the raw edges in, and then they have to make their loop for their button. Anybody who ever wears any kind of jewelry other than a ring, with a bracelet, the clasp is everything. If the clasp isn't sturdy, if the clasp doesn't fit, you will never wear it. And so having that tailored to each wrist is very important. After the button is sewn on, the leather loop is made and sewn on, then they sew up the back and trim that last stitch, and without incident, hopefully. One time I had the last stitch, somebody in her excitement, she clipped the last stitch and cut the bracelet in half. So we try, I always say, you know, be careful with the last stitch. That in a nutshell those are the steps. It takes about 30 seconds to tell how you make it, and it takes several hours to actually complete the task. Milan Village Art School is a gem. The students that come back and take classes from me, I've gotten to know a lot of them. They are returning students. I feel like I've made really good friends here, and I think Milan is transformed, and so fortunate to have the Milan Village Art School. And I just can't speak highly enough of this school, and hope that people recognize the importance in this community. I learn a lot from students that I have, and after every class, if I've learned something new, I try to incorporate that into my next class. I've had classes where the youngest has been maybe 10, up to quite an elderly man, and it's been to my benefit. I'm so happy to have been able to add this part to my professional life as well. I'm very interested in the arts, and I've always done something personally, but the teaching of the bracelet classes has brought really an enormous amount of pleasure to my life. And it's helped me learn more about the Sami, the indigenous Sami people from which this tradition springs as well. So the importance of indigenous cultures, we benefit from that. We benefit from recognizing the art, not only the visual arts, but the music, theater, all of those things. I think we're all enriched by preserving traditional cultural arts and experiences.
This program on Pioneer Public Television is funded by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund with money from the vote of the people of Minnesota on November 4th, 2008. Additional support provided by Mark and Margaret Yakel-Julien in honor of Shalom Hill Farm, a nonprofit rural education retreat center in a beautiful prairie setting near Windham in southwestern Minnesota. ShalomHillFarm.org. Live Wide Open, a regional movement that encourages people to make a great life for themselves in west central Minnesota. More at livewideopen.com. Alexandria, Minnesota, a year-round destination with hundreds of lakes, trails, and attractions for memorable vacations and events. More information at explorealex.com.